Alright, we're doing it today on HooptieDoodle. Today we're making a solo seat for our motorcycle and we're covering it in leather. This is the second time I've made a solo seat for a motorcycle, but the first time I've covered it in leather. And I gotta say, covering it in leather makes me feel like a real craftsman. And this took me quite a bit of time to do, but was highly rewarding. I am very proud of how this came out. And so this video is how I did it, and hopefully it will inspire you to do something similar. Alright, so I'm working on this motorcycle project behind me here, this custom built from scratch motorcycle. And today I'm going to build a solo seat for it. And to do that, I'm starting out with, I'm going to use some 1/8 inch thick sheet here and a standard piece of paper. My seat pan is going to be 10 by 10 basically, with like a 3.5 inch snout on it, so to speak. So I'm going to measure over 5 inches. Half of 3.5 is 1 3/4. Alright, now we've got some rough guides here, and then I've got my little circle maker. I'm going to use this to sort of draw the edges here. Up in here, up in here. There we go. We've got a nice little seat now. Just go ahead and cut this out, and then we have half of a seat, and we trace it, flip it, trace it again, we're good. So there is half of our seat. Now we transfer it onto our piece of metal. Get this guy on here nice and straight. Right there, and go ahead and tape that. So now we've got it on here. I'm going to trace out the one side, then I can flip this over, trace out the other side, and it's perfectly aligned, man. Alright, flip it over. Alright, now we can take this off. Get to cutting this thing out, and that should be our seat, basically, when we're done. Something along those lines. Alright, we've gone ahead and chewed off a bunch of the stuff here. So now we've got a pretty good shape going. But we've got rough edges here still. You can see how that stuff is all jagged. So we've got to go ahead and clean this up. I'm going to start with like a flap disc or something, then we'll probably move to the belt sander and get this thing shaped out and nice and smoothed out. Alright, so here it is after we've refined everything. This is our shape. The edges are nice and round and smooth at this point. Spark plug dog. Ends of 3/8 bolts, which we're going to use on our seat here. So we got our seat bracket here, and it's got these slots here for our actual seat pan to go into, and they're designed for these 3/8 inch bolts. Alright, so I've got these set up and I've got them adjusted all the way over to one side. And now I'm going to get my center to center spacing on these because I don't remember what it was when I built this thing. So it's 2.5 inches. So that is what we want for our spacing, because I'm going to put some studs on the bottom of the seat pan, and the seat pan will slot down onto here, and then you'll bolt it on from the bottom. So that's this guy here. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my little spot where I'm going to put the studs on there, and we're going to drill out some holes in here, and I'm going to plug weld it from the opposite side. You flip it over and you'll have this nice little stud sticking out, and you'll be like, how did they put that on there? Alright, so my center line is conveniently still marked on here from when we actually made the seat itself. I'm going to go off of that. My first stud, I want about 1.5 inches off the front here. And then my second one is spaced 2.5 inches back from that. Alright, so with my marks made and double checked on the bike, and I've also double checked that I'm in the center this way and this way, I'm now going to go ahead and center punch these things and reference them, and then we're going to go ahead and bend this seat first, and then we're going to drill these things out. I think that's how I want to do it. Alright, so to bend this, I'm going to bend it on the shop press, and I'm going to do it, I'm going to get kind of nerdy with this, whatever, a little detailed, and I'm going to basically bend it every 1/2 inch. So I want to go ahead and mark on this thing every 1/2 inch. Sort of draw a line across here, 5.5. 6, 6.5. And I'm gonna do tiny little bends, and so this thing should look like a smooth bend, hopefully when we're done. Like a roll. It should look like a roll when we're done. And this is my homemade press brake, so to speak. And so this has a built-in 90-degree angle on it. So we're gonna stick the seat pan in there and we're gonna press it just a little bit at a time. Get my lines lined up. I'm just making sure I got 2 lines on the, or 2 dots on the pan itself, and want to make sure they're lined up with this line here, basically. Oh yeah, you should be able to see this. Oh yeah, my friend. All right, so you see the lines, the dots on there. I want to align those with my edge on my angle here. And then that should translate into this thing being straight across, and we'll get a straight bend across our pan. Alright, slight bend. It may not actually bend anything by the time we take it out. So let's see what we got. Yeah, that's basically nothing. All right, let's see if we did anything this time. All right, so super slight bend to that. Super slight. There's a bend on there, and you can kind of see the crease going across there. So I'm gonna move it up now and keep bending just a little bit. Alright, so there's our bend so far. You can see it's pretty subtle at the moment, but I'm probably going to continue at this, and we'll see if we can bend it up a little bit more than this. I like a bit more of a curve to it than this. Alright, and here we are ultimately. This is our bend that we've got in it, which I'm pretty stoked about this. This is a pretty nice bend, I believe. I like the way this looks. It should keep me from falling off the back is what I'm hoping. That's it. I like that technique. It's super simple and quick and easy if you've got the shop press. Otherwise, I mean, you can stick this in something and like physically bend it. You know, you can stick it in between 2 pieces of metal or whatever, or like a park bench. I've heard people say they do it that way. Just bend it up a little bit at a time. Go ahead and try that, but I like the shop press idea. Much less labor intensive. All right, now I want to go ahead and drill my little holes out on the bottom side here. Oh, here it is with our little holes in it now. That's what's going to secure it to the bike right there. I've got some 3/8 inch threaded rod here. I'm going to cut this to about 1 inch. Alright, so in order to plug weld this thing on here, I've got my seat, got the pan here, I got my stud with a little nut on the end of it, and just enough so that this will stick up into the seat just. The nut basically should help keep this thing straight on the bottom here, so it sticks straight out the bottom. Should have a straight bolt on the bottom here. Off now. So it is. It looks very professional. And the other side, it's pretty flat. We can probably leave it that way, or we can grind this thing flat. But now we get to do the next one. So I've had this thing soaking in vinegar to get all the plating off of it. Now it should be just bare steel. And again, I'm going to do the same thing where I set this thing up, get it so it's just poking through the end there. Set it up on here. So what I'm trying to do is get it below the surface. So this is only like 1/8 of an inch thick, and so I want it to be like a 1/16 of an inch depth that I'm filling. Basically is what I'm going for here. It looks very professional in my opinion. With our seat pan this far, we now have to drill some holes for rivets, because I'm going to end up riveting some of the leather onto the seat pan here. So that's our next step, and I'm basically going to have like 5 or 6 rivets or whatever on here. A couple up here, a couple here, a couple here, and like one back here. Figure out where they're going to be, mark them. I want them about 1 inch off the edge here. I do some right about here. Alright, so now with them marked, I ended up with 9, just because that's what I feel comfortable with in terms of securing the leather on the back here. I'm going to go ahead and center punch them and drill them out. Alright, so here is our seat pan with our holes drilled in it. And this will come into play in a minute once we actually get everything painted, which is the next step. I'm going to prime this stuff, paint it, and then we'll be back. Alright, and then in order to do the foam on here, I've got some adhesive, this Gorilla Glue adhesive. I'm going to try this out. Before, I have previously used a 3M product called Super 77, I believe, and that worked well on the Goldwing seat that I did, which is very exact sort of style seat as this. So we're gonna try this out. I tried a test piece of this. I think this will work just fine. And then we've got this. This is Minicell foam or mini cell foam. And this stuff is what they use this for, like kayaks and things like that. So it's totally like waterproof and whatnot. And it's quite comfortable in my experience. And I have some 1/2 inch thick stuff here that I'm using on this seat. Conveniently already has a curve that fits my curve here pretty well. I'm going to spray the back side of this. I'm going to spray this. I'm going to let them sit for a second so they tack up. Adhesive gets tacky on there, and then we'll stick them together and sort of try and set something heavy on here, probably a piece of pipe or something, so that it sort of puts some pressure down on there. Let's take this stuff off of here. See what we got. It looks like it is adhered very nicely. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim off the excess foam. To trim it, I just got this hacksaw blade here. That should work if you've got like a turkey, one of those turkey knives, those electronic turkey knives, those work great. Alright, now we start to get a look at the seat. Look at that. Look at that thing. The grinder out, flap disc. Alright, so we've got a grinder with the whole flap disc on the end of it. Alright, and that gets me so far. It gives me a nice, starts to rough out the shape a little bit here. I'm just trying to round over the edges a little bit. The rest I'm going to do with sandpaper by hand. And that's it. That is a basic foamed out seat pan at this point. So far I'm happy with it. But yeah, you can see this is the straight foam. It's very smooth there, and then once you've roughed out the edges with that sandpaper, it is pretty rough. I could keep going with finer grit sandpaper and smooth this stuff out more, definitely, but this is all going to get covered up with the leather. You'll never see it. So I'm just trying to get a broad stroke here on this thing. All right, I've got a square of leather that I ordered. You can totally go and buy all kind of leather in different shapes and sizes. You can buy whole pieces of whole cows, sides of cows, tops of cows, bottoms of cows. But I just ordered this square. I've got 2 squares that are the exact same size. That one will fit on one side of the seat and one will fit on the other side of the seat. This one's going on the bottom. So my first step is to mark out where these studs are on the leather here. So make sure this is in the center here. I should just sort of be able to rub this in with my little fingers, and those will mark onto the leather. I'll transfer over like that. Now I can go ahead and punch these out. All right, in order to punch it out, I'm gonna make my own punch here. I've got some tubing here that is larger than these studs here, so I should be able to grind down the edges here so that they're nice and sharp, and then it should pierce through that leather. There it is, nicely beveled to a sharp point on the inside there. All right, now we got a piece of sacrificial wood here. Put this guy down, punch these guys out. Look at that. Look at that, how neat is that? Like a professional. Now, I should, in theory, fit over our little studs just nicely. That is so nice. All right, the next thing I've got to do is mark out where the other little holes are on here. Because you remember we drilled all these little holes around here that we're going to rivet this leather down onto the bottom of the seat with. I'm gonna actually bolt this stuff down to help keep this thing steady. Those nuts back on here. All right, that should keep this thing from moving around. And then basically I'm gonna go around here and figure out where these holes are and then push on them from the top side. This should give us an indentation. All right, so now those have transferred onto the back side here. See that? See the little holes, 1, 2, 3. Sweet. All right, then now I want to take this back off of here and we'll punch little holes in those things. Flip this over. And now I've got this little, it's like a little leather punch stitching hole tool. You'll see these later on. This is just one that comes with one. I've got ones that have multiple prongs on them, and you use these when you're stitching the leather together. So we'll be doing that later on. So this one, I don't want to punch out a big giant hole for this. I just want to do a way for the rivet to get through here. All right, so I'm just making like a little crisscross in here with this guy. I've got the hole, I'm doing a punch on this side, a punch on that side, a punch that side, a punch that side. So I'm effectively creating a little crisscross pattern there. And then I can stick the this guy through there, and it's nice and tight, which is what we want. All right, now with all of our little holes taken care of on the bottom here, now it's time to sort of test fit this thing again on here and make sure that we are. All right, so I'm gonna put all my little rivets in there, and then we'll start thinking about riveting that on. All right, so these are the rivets I'm using. This is just general hardware store stuff. I'm using, they're 3/16 of an inch wide, the diameter on those, and then I've got a grip of 1/4 of an inch, and the grip is the height this way. Now we're going to again break out our spray adhesive and spray the back side of this in our little pan here, and we're gonna glue them together and then rivet them down. get our rivets all riveted on. And so basically you just want to make sure this is down as tight to the surface as possible. And you go through and stick this over that and squeeze and push down at the same time. There you go, it snaps off once it gets the right torque, and that's it, it's riveted on. Half of them did not break off appropriately. They should break off flat like that, and I got about half of them that didn't. They broke off up near the top here. They still function as rivets. They riveted that thing down. I'm gonna cut this off with the grinder and the cutting wheel. Just cut that off. Here we are, here's our rivets. Everything's nice and smooth and flat to the pan. Exactly what we want. All right, so next I've got the top piece of leather here. It should be pretty much exactly the same as the bottom piece of leather. And so this guy, we're going to want to get in here, do the same sort of thing and glue this on to the top. I'm gonna put my friend the pipe back on here. Let that sort of hold everything down. And then we'll be back in a bit after that's had some time to dry. This should be solidly on here now. And here's a step procedure that I could have possibly done better, which is we got to cut out the sides and stuff here a little bit now to sort of shape this to the seats more. And I could have possibly more easily done that before I put this top piece of leather on. And I could have shaped out the bottom a little bit more before then. I think I could do just fine. Now that it's on there, I'll show you how but it might have been easier, and it might be easier for certain people to do it before you do the top leather. I'm using like a compass. It serves the same function as, I believe, what's called a scribe. If you actually have a piece of the leather, the right leather tool, it's called a scribe. But I'm going to use this guy because it functions the same way, basically, where you can set your spacing for whatever line you want, and I can run this around the seat here and scribe a line that is X amount of distance off of the side of the seat. And so we can already kind of see on this thing the shape of the seat. I mean, you can see it right there. And so I'm going to use that and run my compass around like so and scribe a line. So you can kind of see what I'm doing there, I hope, on camera. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut out this portion here. Alright, so then they sort of meet up like that. And I've got a lot of excess material on the sides at the moment. We will trim that down later. Alright, so now I want to further refine the edges, so I've adjusted this thing to hopefully the length that we want ultimately, or very, very close to it. And now I'm going to go ahead and go around here again and scribe, rolling the top over the foam here and holding it kind of where I ultimately want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and sort of scribe out this distance from the foam out to the edge here. So hopefully you can see this, my little scribe marks at the top here, and get an idea of where I'm going with this thing. I'm going to go ahead, cut this top piece of leather out, and then we'll get the bottom piece to match it, and then we'll start gluing stuff together. I've got the top one now trimmed out very nicely. And so now we got to get the bottom one trimmed out very nicely as well. All right, I've got my edges kind of where I want them at this point. I can go ahead and start clipping these things down on the edges and gluing everything. So you can see how close I am kind of at this point. I've got ½ an inch or something hanging off the edge here. Glue this together, then we let the glue dry. And what I'm using is this stuff right here. Some leathercraft cement, although there are many different options on this stuff as well, depending on preferences and this and that. This is the only one I've ever used. I've done a couple other leather projects, but not many. So I just want to get in here and get a good serving of glue. I'm not trying to go too crazy in here, but I do want to make sure there's enough for both sides. Put some glue in there and then smash these edges together and clip them. And this leather glue stuff that I'm using, there's quite a bit of working time with this. All right, there it is. There is the seat all clipped up. Now I wait a few hours, or at least an hour, for this stuff to dry, and then we can come back. We can start punching holes along the sides here with our little hole punchy guy here. All right, now it has been long enough for the glue to dry on here, enough to hold this stuff together. And now it's time for these guys, our little forked prong things here. I've got a set of these things. I'll put a link in the description to where I got them. These are just cheap ones. You can spend more money on them if you want, but these are metal, and if you're just starting out or just trying this stuff out, why buy expensive stuff? Now, when you're doing this, you can use this, like a scribe thing like this, to set the actual distance you want from, or some reference point, either from the outside edge or the inside along the seat itself. You can sort of mark out where you want the line to be. I kind of already have an idea of how I want to do this, and so I'm just going to go about it. Basically, set this guy up, hit it with a hammer. I should go through both layers of leather. Like that, and then wiggle this thing out. And I like to move it down. And so now we've got 4 holes there. I like to move it down and keep it in a couple of those holes, or at least one of those holes, to get the proper spacing as we go around here. As I get to the corners where things are rotating, I want to use fewer of these tines. All right, now as we come around to the end, we're going to meet up with the first hole we did here, and I'm hoping these things line up pretty nicely. The spacing on here is such that you really shouldn't be able to tell if it's off just a little bit. Yeah, it's about perfect. There we go. You can see, hopefully you can see the holes here. Goes all the way through both pieces of leather, and that glue holds these things together so you can work this stuff through here like this. As you're punching the holes, everything stays together and stays lined up. Otherwise, you could have this whole thing shift. By the time you went all the way around the seat, it would be problematic. So now it's time to start stitching it all together, which is tedious, but highly rewarding once you're done. Got some red thread. I've got some red thread here, like nylon. That's one thing. That's what I'm using here. There are other things. There's like wax cottons and whatnot, and different thread thicknesses. And I'm really not much of an expert to tell you much more than that. But there are different thicknesses. This is probably on the thinner end that I'm using on this seat. But I'm going to go through this. I'm going to lap through it more than once. So we're going to make sure it's nice and strong. These are the needles I'm using. These are apparently pretty popular with leather craft people. Here's my needles. They're both the kind of blunted end ones. They're not supposed to be super sharp. I'll put a link in the description to these needles as well that I'm using. And we use 2 at once. And I'll show you, and that'll make much more sense in a minute here. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get like an obscene amount of thread off of here. I'm gonna try and make one whole lap around the seat here. Is my hope, my dream. So go ahead and thread up both these needles, one at each end. Tie off a needle to each end of the thread. Now this gets fun because this is so long and it's gonna want to snag on everything. I've got all these little clips on here that's gonna want to snag on. I'm gonna remove these clips as we go along, but for right now I'm gonna continue to have them hold on our leather here. I'm going to start right at the very front here and just thread this needle up through. So I'm just sending this needle right up through from the bottom. We'll thread it all the way through, and then I want to try and get my thread sort of evened out so I have the same amount on both sides of this hole. All right, now with it evened out, I'm going to move it over one hole and then go down through that hole and pull this all the way through. And then with the other needle, the opposite thread, the one that is hanging into the original hole, I'm going to come up through that same hole and then pull that one all the way through. Alright, so that is one stitch right there, and it looks exactly the same on the bottom. Same deal going on, and we're just going to continue to do that. We're basically are taking each piece of thread and going through the hole, up through, so that when we're done, we'll have these cool saddle stitches all the way around this thing. So you get like a rhythm to it as you go along. And then once I get about this far, now I want to pull this stuff tight, tighten it up. You don't have to pull it super tight, but just enough to keep these things taut. So there's that. That's about a couple minutes worth of work. And now I just keep going around and we'll get this whole thing done. All right, so here is once around the seat. And now you start to see the beauty of this thing. So there's a nice little stitching. I'm gonna go back around again and double stitch this thing, and it'll be quite nice, quite sturdy. And then we can go around and sort of clean up the fringes of this thing. Although I'm kind of liking the whole like grunginess of it. All right, so I guess time does fly when you're having fun, because it doesn't seem like I've been out here that long, but I've been out here I think about 4 hours stitching this thing. So to finish this off, basically I still got the two ends, my two needles, and we're going through one hole right there, going in opposite directions. I've already stitched, I came down this way and stitched through here, and then I stopped and I'm back stitching this way, and now, and I'm going like three or four stitches through, and now I'm going to bring this guy, the one on top, back down through the bottom, so that both of my threads are on the bottom of this thing. And now you can just cut it off the way it is, and that's what most professionals seem to do. And then you've got a couple tiny little threads sticking up through there. I'm going to come through with the torch and I'm going to burn off a couple of these. And we got one sticking up through there. That was kind of a mistake, and so I'm going to melt these things off. Butane hand torch thing. Just sort of. And that is our seat thus far. I'm super excited about how well that's gone. Now we just have to clean up the edges here. To further clean up the edges on this thing, I've got some burnishing gum, this stuff here. Again, I'll put a link in the description to where I got that, and these little burnishing tools I've got here. Basically these go along the sides here and sort of help to like smooth it all out. And this goes on to my drill. All right, so edges are now burnished. All right, there's our seat. It's done. This took a good long weekend. Like, it can be done in one weekend. But yeah, here it is. I am actually very proud of this. This looks very, very nice. I'm quite pleased. So now to protect this, because leather outside in the rain and all that stuff that it could happen on the bike is not so great for leather, I can treat this with mink oil or neat's foot oil and that should help protect it. The only thing you want to know about neat's foot oil is that if you're using a natural sort of thread on there, like cotton, that can degrade the cotton. So one of the reasons I use the polyester thread on this is so that I can use either of those oils without any issue. So here's my seats, man. Pretty happy. First time I've ever made one of these seats, and I'll probably make some more because this is highly rewarding. It's very cool. I love working with the leather. It's just so like classic and durable. I love really durable stuff, and this is probably one of the classiest, nicest things I've made. We usually don't make stuff this nice on HooptieDoodle. So like I said, all the stuff that I've used in this video, I'm gonna have links in the description to all the stuff that I got and I used on this. And so if you're looking for this stuff or just want to know what it is, it's all written down there. All right, I would like to take a moment to celebrate this accomplishment with a dance I've been working on. That's it. Thank you very much. Well, thanks for watching. If you are inspired to try this stuff on your own, I have linked everything I use in this video in the description of the video down below. And just be prepared that this took me a long time, like a serious long weekend. Around 15 hours, I would say, I'd estimate, to get this thing done from start to finish. And so it's not a quick thing for sure. And it's another one of those things that it's either time or money. You're investing time or money, you know, on this. I saved myself a lot of money, but I spent a lot of time, and those things are kind of equivalent. So you could go out and buy this thing for a couple $100s. You could buy an equivalent seat, or you can make your own. I'll put the amount I spent making this thing here. That's it for this video. It is the next piece of the puzzle for our Honda Grom build though, and it is gonna be, it's starting to look pretty nice. If the seat is any indication, this is gonna be a nice bike. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.